This week on Stay in the Truck, we're going to preview Week 10 for college football. So grab you a cold beverage and let's go. Welcome to Stay in the Truck, the ultimate podcast for sports enthusiasts and avid gamblers alike. Each week we'll provide you with invaluable insights, analysis, and tips to elevate your game. We can be found on all major podcast and social media outlets. See the show notes for details. Stick around to the end to hear this week's most boneheaded sports moments with our Stay in the Truck Awards. So let's jump right into this week's show. All right, guys, let's get into this week. It is Week 10. Last week, we saw 3 ranked teams being handed losses by unranked teams, including undefeated Oklahoma. So let's start off with the Georgia-Florida game.
All right. What'd you think of that game? I loved it. I loved every second of it. I really hope that Georgia's really starting to silence some of the naysayers. Everybody still wants to have doubt. And I've heard some more doubt after the game this week, but what they're doing is impressive. And obviously, we'll talk a lot more about it and go into detail on our Dog Show podcast. But I just wanted to get this show started on a high note with them Dogs rolling over Florida 43-20. Some of those Florida points were gimme points at the end of the game.
My most favorite part of that game was dumbass Gary Danielson. They were like talking about strength of schedule, talking about Georgia hasn't played anybody. And they were like, so who's Georgia beat? And Gary finally gave us some love. And he said, everybody.
Everybody. He ain't got no choice.
Yeah, Gary did give us a little love there. Yeah,
and I think he hit the under on the amount of times he talked about Alabama this week.
Yeah, I actually didn't even hear him come up, quite honestly. So, I expected him to at least mention Alabama or Nick Saban or Tua, even though he's not even with Alabama anymore.
Right. But unfortunately, we have another CBS game next week, and we're probably going to get him again against Mizzou, so I'm sure he'll redeem himself. But anyway, enough about that. If you want to talk about some Georgia stuff, y'all can tune in on the Dog Show. Let's move on to Georgia Tech, North Carolina.
Got to be the biggest upset of the week. Got to be. Georgia Tech just absolutely stuns the Tar Heels with a huge win, and there's some really crazy stats that go with what Georgia Tech. I mean, who the hell is Georgia Tech this year?
Well, they've beat 2 unranked teams this year.
Let me give you some of their craziness, right? Georgia Tech has only won on even numbered weeks. They won in week 2, week 4, week 6, and week 8. And week 10, they faced Clemson, which they very well could win, because we all know the shit show that's going on at Clemson this year. And week 12, this even number streak is going to come to a harsh end when they face the Bulldogs.
But that's just an odd stat.
It's crazy. Now, here's what's even odder. They've played 3 ranked teams this year. Each team they played that was ranked number 17. They beat 2 of them in North Carolina and Miami.
Is this some like Chat GPT voodoo stuff they're pulling up, or is there somebody actually sitting in a dark room looking at this kind of crazy stuff?
No, this is legit stats.
There's some weird ones.
They're 2-1 against ranked teams this year, and all 3 of those teams were ranked 17. And one of them was Ole Miss, and they did take the loss to Ole Miss.
All right, hold up now. It only gets even more crazy here. Here's possibly the weirdest part. So Georgia Tech has scored 254 points. They've allowed 254 points. They've scored 33 touchdowns, and they've allowed 33 touchdowns. In other words, as a team, they've scored 31.8 points per game and allowed 31.8 points per game.
Insane. Just the weirdest year I can recall for a college football team. But kudos to them. Kudos for getting a couple of ranked wins and maybe building some momentum.
What I was looking for was just by some freaky chance that Clemson would somehow fall into the number 17 spot on the polls and lose that game in 2 weeks. But you know what? Clemson's not even in the top 25.
Clemson hadn't been ranked, and they're not going to be.
All right, the Kansas Jayhawks take down the Boomer Sooners, baby.
What's crazy about this game is how ineffective Dylan Gabriel was. And he was still 14 of 19 passing, but he did throw an interception. He had no touchdowns throwing, and he ran for 64 yards, averaging almost 5 yards a carry. But Kansas just seemed to have an answer. Their quarterback was 15 for 32. He wasn't even 50% and threw 2 interceptions.
And they still won the game.
Oklahoma rushed for 269 yards versus Kansas rushing for 225 yards. Like, nothing on this game makes any sense.
Yeah, 55 rushes for Oklahoma and 19 passes. Kansas was also rushing 41 times, but at least they threw it 32 times, so they were mixing it up a little bit.
Well, the big thing is Dylan Gabriel's interception was a pick six, and that gave them some momentum and helped out with their lack of offense. So everybody's surprised by that. That hurt Dylan Gabriel's Heisman stock. He was kind of establishing himself as one of the front runners had they won out and continued to do well this season. And I think losing that game and throwing the pick six and kind of hurt him where he needed to be in that Heisman race. I saw that Michael Penix Jr. had moved up in the odds as the favorite right now, followed by J.J. McCarthy and Jaden Daniels. And then Bo Nix, who I still think, if I had to say anybody that's getting some shade, I've got another person to talk about who I think is getting a lot of shade, but Bo Nix and the Oregon Ducks, the most comparable team on the West Coast to what I see with Georgia right now, as when you hear the ESPN analysts and the announcers and all the people doing the rankings and all the players they're talking about, it seems like they're just kind of in the shadows, and all they do is win. And all they do is play well. Now, of course, Oregon had the screw up against Washington, but they beat them in every aspect of the game. They just didn't kick field goals when they should have.
So this is the second year in a row that Kansas has made it to a bowl game, and the fans have rushed the field, tore down the goalpost, and paraded it down half a mile down the street and threw it into Potter Lake.
Kudos to the Jayhawks, baby.
So anyway, moving on to a little bit of add-on to what I was talking about. Bo Nix is a good lead-in to this next game. Oregon absolutely demolished. Mollywopped the Utah Utes this weekend in Utah. I believe everybody, including myself, thought it was going to be a closer game. I never saw this coming. Oregon just absolutely just thumped those guys 35-6 in Utah.
With Bad Bo.
Bad Bo showed up. Bryson Barnes, a couple of interceptions, had a rough game, under pressure a lot. Barely over 50% passing.
QBR of 18.
That's not solid.
That's not good.
But just all in all, the Ducks were just too much.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be a little bit closer game. But
they were too physical. They were too fast. And when this is a perfect example. People like to bash defenses or praise defenses all the time, and I feel like they don't take into account is the offense lending a hand. This offense doing their part, and this is a perfect example of when your offense can't get first downs and you can't maintain the ball at all. This is what happens. So Utah got 13 first downs. The only reason they led in time of possession is because Oregon would get the ball and score pretty quickly. So they got a lot of opportunities to do something, but they couldn't really maintain long drives, couldn't get the ball downfield, couldn't put points on the board. And ultimately, it gave Oregon too many opportunities. And Oregon is legit. Oregon's for real. I've been saying this all year. I think the Washington loss was a fluke. I think Oregon's going to win the Pac-12, and I think Oregon's going to make the Final Four and be in the playoff. So...
Bold prediction,
boys. But I'm telling you, I don't think it's that bold. I think they're legitimately.
Let's talk about that real quick. Then, who do you guys think is the best 7-1 team right now?
The Oregon Ducks.
Yeah.
Yep. Agreed.
Without a doubt. I don't think there's even a question.
Penn State got exposed this weekend. We've seen Alabama's had some. They seem to be coming on strong, but can they maintain? They got a big test against LSU this week, so I have to agree with you. I think Oregon is probably the front runner. We're
gonna see how a one-loss Alabama team can stand up this week. They got LSU coming to town. We're gonna see if the defense can contain Jalen Daniels a little bit. And the only team that I would put in that conversation,
Washington.
I don't think Washington's it. If Oregon plays Washington again, I bet they beat them by double digits. I've said it ever since that game ended, and they should have beat them by 8 or 9 in that game with simple, short field goals that weren't any longer than an extra point.
Yeah, I would put Alabama up there, and I was kind of on the fence about it until last week when they flipped that switch on Tennessee and just something happened, and I still don't know what it was.
Nick Saban happened.
I know what happened, but I'm just saying I didn't realize that they were even capable of doing that this year.
Well, don't underestimate Nick Saban, and he can only be as good as his assistant coaches. And these assistant coaches he's got now, they're a little newer to the program. That's not saying they're not going to be just as great as some of the coaches that have already left there once they learn his program. But they're still learning the Nick Saban way, and they're still learning to be the coach he wants them and expects them to be. And as those coaches get better, then these kids are going to be better. Because these are still just kids, and you can't take away from the fact that they're talented. But at this level and this age, these kids depend on that leadership. And I think Nick Saban sets the standard with that leadership. And I think that we're seeing his team evolve through the year because we're seeing his coaching staff evolve through the year. So that's my take on Alabama. If they
had a quarterback,
if
what
they
would
show
they
up,
be?
if they show up, hey, he's looked a lot better the last few weeks than I absolutely thought he was dog shit to start the year. I bashed that guy more than anybody, but they've just really looked a lot better. They're a perfect example of a team that has used the season to grow in an effective way. So
Yeah, they're overachieving, no doubt.
But anyway, that's what I think of those guys, and I think that they're the only team that I would put in that conversation as the best one-loss team in America with is Oregon and Alabama. So.
In Washington, they beat Oregon, but
I don't think. I mean, if you want to put Washington there,
I am just because they beat them. Shit.
We're going to watch Washington play a god-awful USC team this weekend, and Michael Penix Jr. is going to have 4,000 yards passing, and the game is going to go into both teams are going to score. They might score 120 points
to 51.
in that game. Yeah. So, all right. Before we get into next week's games, let's just make a real quick statement about how fucking terrible Clemson is this year. And our friend Dabo getting fired at from students this year about why he makes so much money. And he's firing right back like a childish teenager with, if you think you can do better, you should apply. Good luck to you. Just more good things coming. Here's the thing. The greatest analogy one of my bosses used to use is, hey, when the river runs high, you can't see the rocks. So nobody complains about the bumps. But when the water starts to run a little low, everybody starts running into those rocks, and everybody starts complaining. What is Dabo's future?
Man, he's going to keep his job. It's Dabo. He'll get him turned back around. I don't know if he ever gets back on top, though. It's going to take a while.
If he doesn't cave and give in to the transfer portal and get on the program, then he's got one more year max.
With the decline of the number of wins and some of these strange quarterback issues they've had over the last couple of years, I don't know how much longer they're going to let him stay there.
Well, I mean, the guy's won 2 national championships in the last 7 years. Who are you going to go and get to replace him? Is that would be my question. Who would you rather have as a coach right now than Dabo?
Well, that's debatable. Like we can talk about coach possibilities all night, but let's talk about the fact that right now he's 4-4. Like they're not having a bad year. Like he's going to go 7-4. They're not having a bad year where he's going to go 8-3 and miss the ACC championship game and they're rebuilding or whatever. We're talking about a championship caliber program that is now about to face in their next 4 games. They got Notre Dame, Georgia Tech, North Carolina, and South Carolina. They very well could only win one more game and finish 5-8.
Yeah, you're right. No doubt about that.
Or 5-7. When you fall out of grace and you fall to 8-3 or 9-2, or you have a rough year, but when you fall to 5-7 and everybody's taking cheap shots at you and you look like, look at him in this picture right here. I've got their homepage pulled up. He just looks like he just got out of a car accident. Like just beat up. Like he just went 12 rounds with Francis Ngannou the other night. I'm just saying, I don't know if he's got much left. I don't know if they're going to deal with it much. So 5-7 is a huge fall from grace. It's not a rebuild year. Not for a program like that. That should never happen. So anyway, moving on. Tony, what the fuck is going on in Michigan?
I don't know, dude. I am speechless.
It's cold.
It's like there's one thing after the other. You get one media blunder, and it's almost like they're looking for dirt, and they're finding dirt.
Do you know who's finding the dirt, though? Because I
found out keep digging.
Found out something really interesting this week. You know that there's a private investigation firm that was hired to look into the Michigan program. Do you know who one of the leaders of this firm happens to be? His brother.
Are you serious?
Yes. Swear to God. His brother is part of the investigation firm that found and leaked the information and did all of the research to find all of the ticket sales and everything that was going on for the traveling and alleged sign stealing.
This whole
Where is that? Is this is not some...
This is fact.
Okay. I mean, so it has a credible source behind
Yes,
it.
there was
right?
a
It's
credible
not-
source. I saw the
okay.
paperwork.
You didn't pull it off some fake Twitter.
The Onion.
No, I don't have it in front of me right now because I forgot which outlet I was reading it on the other day. But it had the source, the company name, his name. It went through the whole details of how it all happened. Pretty interesting stuff right there.
Thanksgiving is going to be an interesting dinner this year for that family.
Right. All right, what do we got to look to next week? What do we got coming up?
We got some big games next week. We got a matchup between the number 12 Mizzou Tigers and number 2 Georgia Bulldogs. Big game. This is going to decide the East.
Well, last year Georgia struggled with Missouri. Come from behind win. It looked like they weren't going to pull it out. Like this game was a nail biter to the end. It surprised everybody. But one big thing different about this year than last. This year they're going to play this game between the hedges.
And it's going to be loud.
And it's going to be brutal. And we're going to see how those Missouri Tigers can come to Athens.
Georgia's a 15.5-point favorite with an over-under of 54.5 points. Georgia ranks 4th in passing, 6th in scoring, 7th in defense, and the Tigers are top 30 nationally in passing and scoring. So it should be a good game.
It'd be a fun game. But honestly, as a Georgia fan, like we are, the three of us are without our Auburn cohort, Jeff, we hope that Georgia wins by 1,000,000. So the next big game is we got a 6-2 Kansas State team traveling into a Texas. We're going to try to find out, can the Texas Longhorns, can they win without Quinn?
Can they win without Quinn? I love it.
Can they win without Quinn, baby? All right, so we got Malik Murphy playing this week. He was 16 of 25 for 170 yards last week against BYU. 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. He only ran one time for minus 18 yards. Not quite Quinn Ewer's numbers. And now he's got to face a 6-2 Kansas State team that's been good all year. Luckily, they're playing at home. We got a game where Texas is favored by 4. We got a 50.5 over/under, and I'm just not sure what they can do. I don't know what they can do with him. I'm curious to see. This is a game that I'm not touching. I'm not touching it at all until I figure out what Texas identity is going to be with Malik Murphy.
Yeah, I mean, these stat lines are almost identical. Kansas State's got 464 total yards. Texas got 454. Yards allowed, 343 for K-State, 328 for Texas. So it looks like a pretty even matchup on paper. I think I'm going to go K-State here on this one. But
well, let me just tell you, K-State has only lost. They're 6-2. Their 2 losses were 30-27 at Missouri, which is a hard place to go play, right? And they lost to an upcoming Oklahoma State team, 29-21, who's been on an absolute tear, whose quarterback is finally getting into a rhythm and making some waves. So K-State's not to be messed with. And honestly, that might be a game to watch out for. That might be an upset alert game. I don't know. I got to get the feeling a little bit more in my bones, but the more we talk about it, I'm thinking that might be upset alert of K-State and Texas. So
All right, let's move on. Oklahoma State. This one is in Stillwater.
Oklahoma's heading to Stillwater, coming off a big loss, and they're coming into an Oklahoma State team that's on a 4-game win streak. Quarterback Alan Bowman has just, like I said a minute ago, really found a rhythm. He's been on a roll. Their defense is playing decent, not fantastic, but playing better. And the way Oklahoma played last week, the way Dylan Gabriel looked, that may have written a script for Coach Gundy and those Cowboys to follow and have some success, especially playing at home. I think this is in-state. Rivalry games are weird. They can always go either way, but I think it's going to be an exciting game. I think Oklahoma State is ready and up for the task, especially now that they've seen Oklahoma lose. They've seen Dylan Gabriel not be the Heisman front runner and big star that everybody thought he was going to be, even though he's still a great quarterback. I'm really curious to see what happens in this game. I'll look forward to it. So I like to see Oklahoma State come out with a win in this game and keep their rolling ways. Now, they're finally ranked. They just broke into the top 25, and we'll see what happens. Other than that, there's still 2 more games I'd like to bring up real quick. I think one game we can mention, it's not going to be not a lot of implications coming out of this game as long as Washington rolls, but we've got number 5 Washington playing at number 24 USC.
USC's been on the struggle bus.
Actually, they've got number 20 USC. USC's on the struggle bus. They're kind of getting exposed.
The over-under 76.
And I'm going over.
Oh, yeah, over. This game's going to be 55 to 42 or some ridiculous amount of points scored.
There might be 110 points scored.
We're going to see some Pac-12 defense.
Oh, we are going to see some massive Pac-12 defense.
We're not going to see some Pac-12 defense.
Michael Penix might seriously throw for 500 yards in this game. And 7 touchdowns. And Caleb Williams, I think that, I mentioned this a few weeks ago, and I actually heard some people on ESPN talking about it earlier today. Some of the guys on ESPN said Caleb Williams, that they're starting to notice that it's a little bit too much backyard football and that he needs to learn to read through his progressions and play within the system. And I was sitting there thinking, I just said all this a few weeks ago. Like he's playing flag football. I've been saying that all year. Caleb Williams is playing flag football. I think he's going to be an NFL flop. I don't think he's going to be as great as everybody assumes he's going to be. And I'm not saying that he's not a fantastic college quarterback. He really is. He's a fantastic athlete. He's a fantastic quarterback. But does that make him a pro-level quarterback? I don't think so. But I think it's going to be a fun game to watch. Like I said, they're playing at USC. Washington is favored by 3.5, which is kind of low.
Yeah.
I think that's probably because it's an away game for them. I think if they were playing at home, they're favored by 6.5 or 7. But curious to see what happens. Look forward to that one.
Yeah, I mean USC is 1 2-point conversion away from being 6-3 on the season. They don't look good. They can't play defense. Feels like Washington's going to go in there and just throw up points and play a smidge of defense and pull this one out by way more than 3.5.
All right, let's move on. Let's talk about the LSU Alabama game.
All right, boys. Bama's coming in hot off the Tennessee victory. Played like crap in the first half. Got it turned around with Nick Saban's adjustments in the halftime locker room. As always, Nick Saban doing Nick Saban things.
The LSU Tigers are going to bring their god-awful secondary into Tuscaloosa. And Milroe, who's got 1,600 yards on the year, might be at 2,400 yards after this game. But no, seriously, the LSU offense is the only thing keeping them in these games. I mean, they're 6-2, and they should be 3-3. Quite honestly, I mean, they average 5. I mean, this is ridiculous. They average 553 yards a game. What's the goal for Alabama? Hold them to 400 yards because they know that they're going to be. Alabama averages 367 yards a game against the LSU defense. They should get 500 yards. So the over/under 60.5. Like, I can't see these teams scoring under that. So here's what's going to be really interesting. LSU rolls into Alabama this weekend, and if they can pull out a win, we got 4 teams in the SEC West that are sitting as one-loss teams that have all played each other and beaten each other. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out.
Would be 3 teams.
3 teams sitting at 4-1. I would actually like to see Alabama continue their roll. I'd like to see them continue to get better because, quite honestly, there's not much more exciting to me than an SEC championship with Nick Saban versus Kirby Smart. I mean, I love it. I'm looking for the future of that, and those are the 2 teams that I'd rather have there and rather see there than anybody else in the West. I don't care to see Georgia play Ole Miss. I don't care to see Georgia play LSU or it just doesn't have any sex appeal. But Nick Saban versus Kirby Smart, it's an old school offense wins games, defense wins championships kind of matchup. Which one's actually going to prevail. So it'll be a fun game to watch. Like I said, this adds to the list. Quite a few games that I can't wait to watch this weekend. I'm looking forward to it.
All right. So the last game I think we should mention here, although it's kind of lackluster after Clemson's performance this year, but the Notre Dame versus Clemson game, I mean, we called it out at the beginning of the season as being one of those, decision games on how things play out for the playoffs, but man, I'll tell you, Clemson's really just shit the bed. I mean, they're 4-4 right now, and I was looking back, and Dabo, I know we talked about him earlier, but they haven't had a season where they haven't won at least 10 games since like 2011.
We got a 7-2 Clemson. They're out of the playoff chase. We got, a 7-2 Notre Dame. They're out of the playoff chase. We got a shitbox Clemson. So the game, other than hopefully having an entertainment factor, really has no
Entertainment factor.
That's as far as that game goes. Can Sam Hartman put up some crazy numbers so that he actually gets an invite to the Heisman ceremony? Does Dabo run out crying, looking to polish up his resume?
Yeah, coming off 2 losses to Miami and NC State. Yikes.
Let's jump into our picks real quick. Not to go into a whole lot of detail, but I had a good week last week. I went 5-2. It was the second week in a row I picked Oklahoma to cover, and it was the second week that I lost that pick. So Oklahoma, I hope y'all get your brains beat in by Oklahoma State this week for screwing up my picks 2 weeks in a row. But overall, 5-2 last week. Good week leading into this week. But I want to start my picks with this Notre Dame game since we're talking about it. I've got Notre Dame covering at Clemson. They're only 3-point favorites, and I think they go in there and put the hammer down on them. I don't think it's a blowout, but I think Notre Dame wins by 7 to 14 points, 7 to 17, between 7 and 17. Probably close to 2 scores. But I think they handle Clemson the whole time. That Notre Dame defense is pretty legit this year. They've been playing hard-nosed defense. They're physical. And so you've got the Notre Dame strength is their defense. Clemson's strength is the fact that they show up on time. Outside of that, they don't have any strength. Cade Klubnik turned out to be a turd this year, and their offense is shit. They can't drive the ball. They can't score the way they need to. Notre Dame controls the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball and just crushes. So I'm taking Notre Dame -3. I'm going back to Stillwater. We talked about that game a while ago. Oklahoma State at home. I'm taking Oklahoma State +5.5 against Oklahoma. I think they're going to give Oklahoma another scare for potential 2 losses in a row. And if they don't scare them bad enough to where they actually win the game, they're going to keep it close, and Oklahoma's going to have to score late to pull that one out. Then I'm going down to back to Los Angeles, where Washington and Michael Penix is just going to absolutely run up and down the field on USC. So I'm taking Washington -3.5. And I'm actually taking the over on this game because I think these guys might score between 90 and 100 points. I think a 50 to 45 game is not an unrealistic expectation. Then Alabama at home. I think the defense shows up. I think Nick Saban prepares for the running attack of Jalen Daniels. He realizes that he is their offense on the ground and in the air. And I think they put a lot of pressure on him. And I think Alabama wins at home, and I think they cover. I think Alabama wins by close to double digits, 9 to 10 points, and Alabama -3 to cover. And then my last pick of the week, coming off a 2-game win streak over ranked opponents. A few weeks ago, I said Arizona was the best 3-3 team in the country. Since then, they have rattled off wins against number 19, Washington State. They beat 44-6. The following week, they beat DJ Ukulele 27-24, who was the number 11 ranked Oregon State. And this year, they got number 19 UCLA. I got Arizona +2.5 at home. And I got them winning the money line, pulling off the upset over UCLA to win their 3rd game in a row against ranked opponents, even though they have not been ranked in any of those games. But I also have the over-under on that game. I think it was 51 last I looked, and I'm going under. That UCLA offense is not high-powered. Arizona's going to shut them down. And I think they win a good game, probably around 27-24, much like that Oregon State game that they played last week. So that's what I got this week for picks, boys.
Nice. All right. Well, I went 2-0 last week, bringing me to 13-4 on the year. I took Oregon over Utah by the 6.5, and they went and did work versus Utah, as we all saw. And then I took Colorado and the 17 versus UCLA, and they didn't win me my $100 on Colorado getting 5 wins, but they did stay within 17 points of UCLA. So 2-0 last week, 13-4 on the year. Since Jeffrey's not here, I went a little deep this week, boys. I got 5 picks for you.
Ooh. Settle down.
Yeah, about to win all 5 of these and be 18-4 on the year. So I'm going to start with Notre Dame over Clemson. Notre Dame's just given up the 3 points. Dabo's team is looking down and out, and I think Notre Dame comes in there and does work. I have been expecting UGA not to cover all year, but after that butt whooping they put on Florida last week, the game is going to be in Athens between the hedges. I think the fans are going to come out rocking and rolling, get real loud, cause about 10 or 15 false start penalties, and UGA is going to work over Missouri. So I'm taking UGA minus 16 over Missouri there to cover. Maryland. I'm going to take Maryland in the 10 points over PSU. Penn State's coming off a loss versus Ohio State. I like this Maryland team. I think they could do something surprising here, so fingers crossed on that one. Washington, minus 3.5 versus USC. I think Washington is going to go in there and dominate USC. I think it's going to be a shootout. Like I said earlier, I think it's going to be a 55-42 game with very little defense, but I think Washington's got just enough defense when compared to USC to pull out that game. See, almost is 6-3 last week if Cal gets that 2-point conversion at the end of the game. And then finally, I'm staying on the Colorado bandwagon. I'm getting 13.5 versus Oregon State. I hope they win, but it's not looking promising. Shedeur got pretty banged up last week. I think he got hit about 7 or 8 times, absolutely drubbed, and then he got another 5 or 6 contacts after that, and he just wasn't feeling very well. Dion said earlier this week that he was letting him rest a couple, 3 days. So Shadeur's pretty banged up, but you know he's going to come out slinging, and hopefully Dion will get that team turned around. Plus, you know, if they win more games, they get more money to get that stolen jewelry back. So Colorado and 13.5 points I'm taking to stay within Oregon State.
All right. So did not fare well this week. I had 1 win and 2 losses to take my season total with 12 wins and 9 losses at 57%. I had Indiana versus Penn State. I thought Penn State was going to cover this. They did not, so I lost that one. Georgia, Florida, I took Georgia to whip that ass, and they did. I won that one. Oklahoma versus Kansas. I took the under of 65.5. The final score was 38-33, and I lost that one. It went over. For this week, I have a couple of the same picks you guys did. Notre Dame versus Clemson. I've got Notre Dame at the -3. Clemson's on the struggle bus. We talked about Dabo and
Red
his
alert,
frustrations.
red alert, red alert.
All 3 of us.
So Jeff would be doing a deal here. We all picked that game.
The next one, Air Force is on a tear right now. They're an 18.5-point favorite. That's a lot of points. They're playing Army. But the over and under was only 32 on this, and I really think that Air Force is just going to take it to them. So I'm taking the over in that one. The last one for me, Washington versus USC. You guys mentioned that one as well. Washington -3.5. I'm going to take that. I think USC is going to continue to struggle. So, all right. So Jeff threw in some picks here. He's not with us tonight. He had some commitments. So let me see. He's got Rutgers at the +19. Arkansas, he's at +6. Ole Miss -3. Notre Dame, he took the -3, is the same as we did. He also took the under 45. UT San Antonio versus North Texas, he took the over at 70.5. Iowa State at -2.5. Boise State +3. And Jeff's blowout of the week is Florida State at -21.5.
I almost picked that game, and I went on my way about it, but I was there. I almost picked that game too.
All right. Well, boys, let's move on to this week's Stay in the Truck Awards. So my Stay in the Truck Award this week once again goes out to Major League Baseball. They're a repeat offender. They're kind of in the running with Dabo and the NCAA. So usually an extra inning comeback victory in Game 1 of the World Series would be the talk of the town. But unfortunately, this game made history by being the least watched Game 1 in World Series TV history. It was also the 6th World Series game that didn't attract at least 10 million viewers. I'm not going to recap our feelings about the MLB since we've talked about it over the last couple shows, our feelings against the number of teams that make the playoffs, blah, blah, blah. But this just really proves our point. So Major League Baseball, stay in the truck.
Stay in the truck.
All right, so my Stay in the Truck this week is going out to our friends. I seem to keep bringing up Los Angeles, California tonight, but although I don't think that any young men should be taught. It's a new day and age. I'm a little old school, but I don't think young men should be taught to be flashy and show off all their things and show off their watches and their jewelry and be flexing all the time. But that's kind of the precedent we've set in this day and age. So I think Colorado Buffaloes found that it came back to bite them a little bit. The other day, they went to UCLA to play a game, and the locker room got broke into, and a lot of the jewelry of the Colorado Buffaloes got stolen. My stay in the truck goes to the UCLA security staff. Great job keeping that place secure, boys.
Stay in the truck.
Stay in the truck, Mitches.
Stay in the truck.
All right, my Stay in the Truck award this week goes down to Dabo Swinney, the old Clemson ball coach. He is getting in arguments on his talk show with Tyler from Spartanburg, who is questioning why Dabo is getting paid $11 million a year and is sitting at the season in 4-4, which Tyler from Spartanburg has a hell of a point, quite honestly. But Dabo, you shouldn't be arguing with radio callers and young men that have no idea what the hell they're doing or what the hell is going on in you and you're inside your program. And quit arguing with naysayers. So Dabo Swinney, stay in the truck.
Stay in the truck.
Stay in the truck.
That's it for this week's show. We really appreciate you tuning in. Please remember to like, subscribe, and leave us some comments. Let us know how we're doing. Stay in the truck.